Hi, I'm Erika Barber. I am a learning strategist with Traveling Coaches.
Hi, I'm Kalle Covert. I'm the Director of Professional Development at Troutman Pepper.
My name is Nicole Siino-Cole, and I am a consultant at Harbor Global.
So, hello, everyone. So, we are gathered here to talk about something that is more than just a trend. It is a complete game changer, especially in the legal industry, and that is creating a culture of learning. And I know that that phrase, culture of learning, is something that we hear often these days, especially in professional circles. But I want to kick this session off by Callie, I'll start with you answering the question, what does a culture of learning mean to you, specifically in the context of law firms?
Thanks, Erika. So, a couple things come to mind when I think about a culture of learning. I think the first thing is embracing a growth mindset. There has to be a commitment to ongoing development and improvement. There also has to be a recognition that learning is something that's a continuous process. It's not a one-time event. And there also has to be a belief that everyone can grow and improve. Your skills are not innate or fixed. Nobody is born a perfectly formed lawyer. Everyone has the opportunity to grow and improve if they're getting continuous feedback and coaching on their skills. It's also an environment, it's a culture where people are encouraged to try new approaches and learn from both their successes and their failures. I think another key element is having access to resources, and that includes recognizing that training is not one size fits all. There have to be opportunities for collaborative training, for coaching, for on-demand training, or in-person sessions or academies to meet people where they are, both in their career and skill development. And I think the third thing that is so critical for a culture of learning is commitment from leadership. There has to be a commitment from your leadership to actively support and foster these learning initiatives, as well as creating an environment where people feel safe to ask questions and seek feedback and share their ideas.
Awesome. And Nicole?
Yeah, a culture of learning to me really means continuous improvement, like Callie said, and also an encouragement of curiosity. Lawyers are taught to be curious, to really dig deeper and uncover facts and legal arguments to help their clients. And by fostering an environment where questioning and exploration are valued, law firms not only enhance their lawyers' legal skills and their, the team's legal skills, but also better help serve their clients, which ultimately is the goal here. So yeah, fostering and encouraging curiosity. That's what it means to me.
I love that. And when I think of a culture of learning, I think it's more than just the training sessions or the occasional skill building type workshops. It's about being able to take training and learning and embedding that into the very fabric of the entire firm and making sure that it's something that's constant and evolving the way that we work, evolving how we work. And it's something that's not just encouraged, it's kind of embedded in everything that we do. And so as we envision this environment, I think it's also important to understand the foundational elements that make it successful. So, with that in mind, what are the building blocks that turn this vision into a reality? So, Callie, what are the key elements of a successful and collaborative learning culture within a law firm?
Yeah, so I touched on a moment ago just this sense of inclusion and belonging, and I really think that's the key. And so I think sometimes it's easier to think about what it's not, or what are the unsuccessful elements or elements that you don't want in your culture. It's not fear, right? It's not perfectionism. It's not mistakes or fatal. That kind of environment is just an absolute killer for learning, for collaboration. It's also a killer for morale. This idea that good ideas can only come from the top, that there are penalties for making a mistake. What that leads to is, your diverse perspectives get silenced. Nobody's afraid. Nobody's willing to challenge anybody else because they don't want to be called out. There's a lot of blaming and finger pointing, which leads to things like poor retention, burnout, or just disengagement from your workforce. So going back to that culture, there really needs to be this shared sense of belonging or psychological safety so people can feel empowered to speak up, to ask questions, to try something new, and admit their mistakes without, fear of retribution or consequences. And it's just such a solid foundation for your firm. If people are comfortable asking questions or admitting their areas of weakness, it's just going to foster more collaboration, right? I think a great example of this that I love to share with our new associates, it's in the book, Adam Grant's book called Think Again, which is a fabulous book about rethinking, learning, challenging your own opinions, questioning your own beliefs. But there's this really great anecdote about the psychologist and author Daniel Kahneman, where he talks about, I think he was at a lecture, and he talks about learning something that he thought, something that he believed to his core was just absolutely factually incorrect. And he talked to the speaker afterwards, and he was, kind of happy about being corrected or being proven wrong. And he was saying, well, yeah, of course I don't enjoy being wrong, but I enjoy having been wrong because now I'm less wrong than I was before. So I always tell people, I think it's such a great reframe. Don't focus on being perfect. Don't focus on being right all the time. Perfection is not achievable, but being less wrong than you were yesterday or a month ago or 6 months ago, that's a great goal, and that's an achievable goal. So I think it's really powerful to think about mistakes and learning from your mistakes as almost like a superpower.
I love that. And I love that you talked about admitting to mistakes, because one of my favorite quotes that I'm probably at this point overusing is experience is the best teacher. Like, we learn best from some of the things that we do wrong and some of the things that we do right. I also love that you talked on what you quoted about someone else kind of coming in and pointing out what that person was doing wrong, which leads me to my next question, because it's not just all on us, right? It's important that we have other individuals, our stakeholders involved. So, Nicole, when it comes to stakeholders, what key stakeholders are vital in being able to foster a culture of learning?
Yeah, so the first point in, and really where you should, many people should start, is knowing who your stakeholders are. So knowing who your stakeholders are can lead to more effective planning, better resource allocation, and a higher chance of achieving positive and desired outcomes. And that ultimately lends itself to a culture of learning. It's really cyclical. So it's really one of the baseline foundations of a culture of learning is your stakeholders, knowing who they are. Where I typically like to start is with the champions. So who are those people who will help spread the word about the great benefits of the change? These are typically representatives from many areas of the firm, including executive leaders and different sponsors within, different areas of the firm. Leadership, visibility, and participation is the number one factor in driving change anywhere, not just a law firm, but anywhere, and ultimately lends itself to a culture of learning. So you can think about this in a tiered or trickle down approach. So really starting with the executive leaders, identifying who are those executive leaders that can help get this change moving forward. Then think about department heads and then people managers, and really tailoring the message to each one of those stakeholders to get them excited about the change, and encouraging the curiosity of what the change is and how to get them involved. I find that that's a really great way to foster a culture of learning within your stakeholder groups.
So, Nicole, I think we've all had this experience where we have a good idea, we have a solid team, we have a solid action plan, and then we just don't get it off the ground. And it's because we didn't have the right people in place. Sometimes it's because they don't have the right authority, or they can't do what they've been charged with doing, or they're just too overextended, they're too busy, they can't commit to the plan. So what tips do you have for figuring out, who are the key stakeholders, and identifying the right people from the start, so you don't find yourself in that position where you're having to, almost reconstitute midstream?
Yeah, I too have been a quote unquote victim of that as well, with not having the right people in the room, and getting halfway through a project and realizing, oh no, we didn't have the right people. So now we're completely off track. So once again, get those champions in a room, get those key people. Maybe it's 3 people, maybe it's 5 people, and have them help you segment out who the stakeholders are. Every person brings a different perspective to when you're implementing a change. So getting them to help you and not do it alone, as Erika mentioned, not doing it alone, and help them help you get to what the message should be to get them on board. So getting representation from every area of the firm is so critical, and get those stakeholders, but really utilize those champions, those who are really excited about the change. That can always foster a culture of learning and can help you get the right people in the room just by asking, a few simple questions of who is in charge of this process? Let's get them in here.
Yeah, that was a huge lesson learned for me in my former role as a trainer, not involving the stakeholders, which meant I didn't know what their ultimate end goal was. I was moving and kind of rolling out training or deploying software with my end goal, what defines success for me and how I can measure said success, not realizing that I was missing the mark with all of my stakeholders. And so, Nicole, we've talked about the importance of involving stakeholders, but let's talk about measuring success. So, what are ways that we can measure success?
Yeah, so success looks different for every change that you're trying to implement. So when you're developing a culture of learning, it's really important to define up front, how will we know we are successful? So that's typically where I always like to start. Let's define what success looks like for this specific change. From there, start thinking of measuring. So measuring what matters. Don't collect data, don't collect usage data or any sort of data just for data's sake. Use it to your benefit to make you competitive. Take stock of where you're currently at. So that's always a really great starting point. Take a baseline and come up with a measurement plan. So establish how often you're going to measure and what you're going to measure. A great way to do this is to have a 4-question survey to establish a baseline before implementing anything new. Get those usage statistics, get anecdotal evidence to help bolster those usage statistics. And when you're collecting feedback, you want to make sure that you're prepared to actually make adjustments about what you're collecting. So really start off with getting that baseline and defining what success looks like for this specific change that you're implementing.
I love that you talked about being able to make adjustments because oftentimes a mistake that many of us, and I say us because I've been there, make is that we get the feedback from our learners and then we keep down the same path, not realizing that that feedback may mean that we need to pivot or completely modify our entire approach. And so I work a lot with different law firms, and I'm often asked for advice on how a firm that's just getting started, they're at the first step with developing a culture of learning, what steps they would have. And to that, and feel free to chime in, the two of you here, if you have anything else to add. But I honestly feel like in order to build a culture of learning, it's important that we kind of level set and understand where we are as a firm as it relates to our learning engagement and whatever resources that we have available. And so we have to understand, just like with the results from any feedback that we send out, what's working well, where we need to pivot, where there are gaps. And that's going to kind of help create that foundation where we can deliver something that's going to resonate with everyone, not just with one group. And so, as you mentioned, Nicole, kind of conducting that needs assessment so that we can find and pinpoint specific gaps. We can ensure that any learning goals that we have, that they're clearly defined and that they strategically align with whatever the firm's objectives are. And then we can tailor those learning initiatives to address the specific needs, again, building that solid framework so we can have meaningful development rather than taking that one size fits all approach. Because I know, and again, this was a lesson learned for me, we don't want to fall into that training just for the sake of training trap. A lot of T's there. And so once we kind of have that foundation, I think that once we've established that, we've pulled in our stakeholders, we've talked about how to measure success, and we understand that we can't have a one size fits all approach. It's not about just meeting today's needs, but also anticipating future skills and competencies that the firm will require. And that is going to lead to future proofing our training. And so with that, I have a question on that. So how do we ensure that our learning programs can evolve to keep up with the legal landscape and all the new challenges and changes?
Sure. And Erica, actually, before we dive into that, I just want to make one comment on what you just said, because I think it's so interesting. And I think, we do fall into this trap sometimes in the development world about, training is this great, everybody needs training, everybody wants training. But I think it's really important that we also look at these things as bottom line initiatives. We are training and developing and upskilling our workforce, which has a bottom line business imperative for your firm. And that's really important. And I think we need to lean on that more heavily and point to that. And I think that really speaks to what Nicole was saying about leveraging data. We have access to so much meaty data in the roles that we have and the jobs that we do with firms. So I think it's really important to use that to our advantage. And if you're just starting out, if your firm has a strategic plan, if there are things that are already out there that are being used that are critical and that are important and are valued by your management team, then that you really need to focus on those things, going back to figuring out what matters to your stakeholders. And if you can tie your learning initiatives to a bottom line impact, to something in your strategic plan, that's just going to make your job that much easier, because people are automatically going to be more bought into it if it's something that they've already pointed to as something that really matters for the culture of the firm. But as far as future proofing, I think my biggest recommendation is to train your leaders, train your current leaders and train your future leaders. Culture change management, this is hard work and it's long-term work. It's not turning the wheel and doing a 180. It is moving the giant ship, 1, 2, 3 degrees at a time, and being satisfied with that slow incremental change over time. It's really hard to change entrenched mindsets, but it's still worth it to train your senior leadership, ensure that they have the tools to support and foster an inclusive culture and a culture of learning. We've also seen a really strong desire from our associates, our junior partners, to receive training on things like professional skills, on leadership skills, delegation and management. How do you build a team and motivate a team? So there's just a lot of interest in these types of training. So knowing that the people who are in leadership roles now, won't be there in the future, and the people who are coming up the ranks are eventually going to be taking those spots. If you can really start, shaping those minds earlier in their careers, planting these seeds now, they're going to be so much better positioned at the time when they're stepping into these leadership roles to continue this good work and build on the solid foundation that you and the other people in your firm have, from all those seeds that you have planted.
Yeah, it's like, Kalle, what you just said, having this be put into place without you even trying to, it not being an overt thing, but planting those seeds moving forward. Yeah, I love that aspect of it. And I know, so one thing that always comes to mind when I think about how to future-proof an approach, and I know many firms are already doing this, but really using those diverse methods of training is always great, because you've got people and employees of all different skill levels coming in, and you want them to be engaged and really keep up to date with the latest trainings and latest ways of learning. So having things such as just-in-time training, combining that with in-person training and webinars, having those micro learning modules, create those small bite-sized modules that can be updated very quickly. Those are all going to future-proof yourself from that. And once again, fosters a culture of learning, because you're keeping up to date with the latest technology, the latest trends, the latest ways of the different learning styles.
I love that. And I know we talk a lot about different learning styles. Even for me, I have 2 primary ways of learning, but it often changes depending on the initiative, depending on the type of change. So yes, to your point, I think it's important to have different ways that we can learn and deliver training. And so my perspective on that, when it comes to the legal field overall, as we know, it's very competitive. And I feel that staying competitive means that you're staying informed. So laws change, technology is always evolving. I'm sure there's going to be another Microsoft update in about another 30 minutes. And then, of course, the needs of our clients shift. And a culture of learning, having a solid culture of learning, that's going to equip us with the agility to be able to adapt to these changes. And so it gets to a point where it's not just about keeping up, it's about being able to set the pace within our law firm. And when we create and embed a culture of learning, we're not only investing in the individual's careers, but we're also investing in the future of our firm. And with that in mind, I think it's important and it's clear to understand that building and promoting and fostering a culture of learning isn't just a nice to have type of thing. It's something that is absolutely essential for long-term success in any industry, but specifically in the legal industry. And so as we wrap up today, I want to, of course, thank ILTA. I want to thank Kalle and Nicole. It's always great to share the stage with you ladies, even if it is virtually. And I love the fact that we talked about growth and adaptability and curiosity, and encouraging curiosity, as Nicole alluded to earlier, is a crucial part of our journey. And by creating an environment where questions are welcomed, we touched on that earlier, and exploration is encouraged, we're creating a culture that's proactive and resilient. And so, to everyone that's tuning in, I want to just remind you that creating a culture of learning, I want you to think of that ship that Kalle talked about. It is a journey. It's a continuous process that will evolve over time. We're going to receive feedback and we modify and pivot however needed. It is something that will definitely require patience. It will require commitment. It will require a mindset shift. Kalle alluded to that earlier. And just a willingness to be able to adapt and grow alongside your team. There will be challenges along the way, but remember, experience is the best teacher. And every step that we make forward, it's going to strengthen that foundation of us creating that learning culture within our firm. So embracing that journey, it's going to mean committing to a culture that does not just react to change, but thrives through it, because we all know in the world of legal, change is absolutely constant. And so I want to thank you all for joining us today. And we hope that you all are leaving with actionable steps and some inspiration to make a lasting impact within your firms.